Hey, I got your voicemail. So, what's going on with this new story of yours?
We wants to make it a novel. No! We wants it to be a short story. We need space for world building. We have to have a fishing scene. None of our characters are fishermen. What about the pressures? That's a different story.
Whoa, okay, slow down. It sounds like you're having trouble trying to decide on the scope of your story.
There's no scope scissors in the book. Stinky little hobbitses. Tux is our only scope.
No. What I meant is that you're both on different pages about what the story should be and how big it should be.
We don't have any pages yet. We haven't even started writing. Because you won't let me plot. I don't want to plot. I'm a pantser.
Okay, now we're just getting into an entirely different topic.
You're a fancy writers. Tell us, how do we start our story?
Well, you're in luck, because today's episode of the podcast is about setting the proper scope for your story. I published an article about it a couple days ago.
Ooh, we loves reading articles. No, we don't. We are audio learners.
Well, in either case, if you stick around, you'll get some tips on how to set the scope right for your story.
Good. We shall listen to the Writers' Roll podcast. Oh no, I forgot my D20.
Actually, Writer's Roll is a new podcast that just released from Hazel Allen. You know, I was the first guest on the show, though.
Oh, there are too many podcasts. No, we loves podcasts. Especially the Saved as Document podcast.
Close enough. Welcome, everyone, to the Saved as Draft podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of the Saved as Draft podcast. This week's episode is packed with new shoutouts, a new interview with a twist, and we're going to talk about setting the proper scope for your stories and novels. But first, some quick housekeeping. We're at the end of the Madness and Mayhem Challenge, and I just wanted to say, once again, how much I appreciate all the enthusiasm and excitement for the prompts this month. All of you inspire me every day. So, the chance to inspire you as well is an honor and a privilege. Now, I know many of you are going to miss the prompts every day. I've actually heard some stories in my subscriber chat already about it, but I assure you that I'm already thinking about what's coming next. It won't be another 3 months until the next challenge either, I can promise you that. In fact, I'm exploring options for more steady prompts, maybe once a week, while I brainstorm what our next big monthly challenge and its theme will be. All of that is to say, thank you for your support, and stay tuned. There's plenty of fun stuff happening in the pipeline here at The Writer's Journey. I also want to shout out Hazel Allen's new podcast and giveaway that we mentioned in the intro. The podcast is called The Writer's Roll, and it's a show where guests roll a dice to select from a list of 20 pre-written questions. They answer 10 in total, but they don't know what they'll be until they roll. Guess who the show's first guest was? That's right, it was me. I had a ton of fun on the show, and I think the format is super unique. So check out the show notes for a link. Hazel's also hosting a new Bookstack giveaway where you could win up to $50 in bookshop.org gift card credit. Also, during the course of the giveaway, Hazel's poetry chapbook, Inside the Sun and Moon, is on sale digitally for just 50 cents. Inside the Sun and Moon is a small collection of poems written over the course of a few years that discusses feelings of loneliness, longing, love, and desire, as explored through the writing lens of Hazel Allen. Purchasing a copy of this collection will also count as an additional entry point for your giveaway, but will not affect your chances of winning or losing. There are plenty of other ways to enter the giveaway as well. You can check out all the details at the link in the show notes, but you'll want to hurry because your opportunity to enter ends on June 12th. Shout out to Hazel and Bookstack for what sounds like another amazing giveaway. Last thing before we get into this week's shoutouts, I also wanted to call out Olivia or OJ Barr, who just launched a really exciting new posting schedule this week on her publication. She's going to be posting full chapters of her fantasy novel, Awen Rising, alongside other articles and writing tips. And I wanted to call this out because it's a wonderful example of how to structure your content and also create a posting schedule that's consistent and valuable. I think it's a great example of what we were discussing the last couple weeks on the podcast in regards to balancing your writing goals with the need to avoid burnout. So check out what Olivia's doing for a great example, and I'll put the link to everything she's got going on in the show notes. All right, and let's get into this week's shoutouts. As longtime listeners know, I post a shoutouts thread each week in my subscriber chat where you can share links to your latest work. I've also partnered with Mina Howell's Penny Dreadfuls podcast to double your chances of being featured. As always, I've selected 5 stories at random from the list of submissions, so let's see what we got for this week. First up this week is Love at First Swipe by The Verdant Butterfly. This story is amazing for a lot of reasons, but firstly, I have to share what inspired it. This was a story written for day 26 of the Madness and Mayhem Challenge, in which I asked writers to write a story in a genre they're not familiar with. The Verdant Butterfly decided to write a rom-com for the challenge. I actually saw a few people who typically do horror or more intense stories in poetry try their hand at romance for this prompt, and in this case, it was a slam dunk. The story stars 2 characters who are opposite in a lot of ways, but manage to find common ground in ways neither of them expected. We get a snippet of story from both perspectives to start, and then the story ends on a charming note with plenty of room for speculation on how their relationship could develop into the future. The story works so well for a lot of reasons, but one of the best elements is the dialogue. The Verdant Butterfly is one of the best writers in the game when it comes to dialogue. It's always sharp, natural, and it perfectly reflects the characters' personalities in every story they write. Both characters are instantly interesting, and the way they interact is just the right mixture of awkward and charming. It's a really fun, heartwarming, and funny story. It's also a perfect example of how talented writers can step into other genres if they so choose. All they need is the chance. Here's an excerpt I really enjoyed. "I'm telling you," said Sean, his business partner and resident chaos muppet, "Nest is about to blow up. You should be in on it. People want to know the guy behind the code." "I built it," Elias said, stirring oat milk into his coffee like it had personally wronged him. "That doesn't mean I want to date on it." "You're single." "I'm busy." "You quote Douglas Adams and eat leftover pad thai in your bathrobe. You need this." Elias arched a brow. "Since when did you become my dating coach?" "Since your last relationship ghosted you during Comic-Con and you didn't notice for a week." "That's fair." Notice how the dialogue moves at this really nice pace, but we also get insight into Elias as a character. The other protagonist, Elspeth, is even better in her scenes. I loved this one. Find a link to the story in the show notes. Next up this week is Anna Lee Chapter 1 by Rebecca Rocket. This was my first time reading Rebecca's work, and this particular series bills itself as, quote, a tale about a millennial great Gatsby, and I think that alone makes for an excellent pitch. Throw in the early 2000s nostalgia and a nice mood board at the end of Chapter 1, and Rebecca had my attention. The story really does feel like a modernized Great Gatsby right from the beginning, with a reference in the first few paragraphs, but it also carves out its own place and style. In this story, Anna Lee is our Gatsby parallel, known for her parties. Our protagonist, Erin, has a conversation with her roommate in this first chapter, named Joan, that just immediately pulls you into the story and the setting. The dialogue here is excellent as well, and the way the story peppers exposition throughout keeps everything moving at a nice pace. Millennials like myself will also see reflections of ourselves in some of the references, and just sort of the existential quandaries that we all faced during those college years, where the only thing we really wanted to do underneath it all was just understand ourselves and our place in the world. It's a captivating piece. It nails the fundamentals while also bringing forward those shades of Gatsby to pay homage to its inspiration. Here's an excerpt I really enjoyed. "Erin, is this how you want to remember your college years?" she said pointedly. I looked down at my pajama pants, stained with watercolor, because who needs a paint rag when you have pajama pants? And considered a moment longer than Joan was comfortable with. "It shouldn't take you that long to consider," she sighed with exasperation. "I can't help it if I'm a romantic." Joan had just come out of the bathroom, clad in her bathrobe, and a sweet-smelling steam was emanating from the door behind her. Her hair was still wrapped high on her head in a towel, but she had a hairbrush in her hand, and she pointed it at me for emphasis. "This is not romantic. It's sad." See how the dialogue mixes so well with the exposition? It all just flows effortlessly, but the reader is constantly receiving new information about the story and the characters. Fair warning here. Once you start this series, you're not going to want to stop until you've consumed every available chapter. Check the show notes for a link to Chapter 1. Third this week is Blood for You by Aurora Gemortian. This piece really caught me off guard in the best way possible. I was immediately intrigued by the title, but the writing style here is absolutely radiant with emotion and conviction. You can almost feel the pain in some of the lines. Like with any great poetry, I think there's a lot of ways you could interpret this piece, but to me, it speaks to the way that we sometimes tear ourselves apart in the name of love or being accepted. We cut and cut until there's nothing left. And even then, we tell ourselves that if we just try a little harder, we'd finally reach that plateau where all the suffering was worth it. It's a piece that is beautiful, but it's also horrifying, surreal, and entirely captivating. I'm truly blown away by this one. Aurora is incredibly talented. Check out this excerpt. "So heavenless I create myself, and in the devil's garden I grow 6 and 6,000 seeds of blood magic in my soul, each one diminishing me, each one making me less and less, each one a bloodletting, an expulsion of poison, fertilizing the earth with my gore, tending the seeds with the excess of my malice, the soil singeing and sputtering with flame at the very touch of me, until bloom, whereupon the flower bursts into a single, abundant, grotesque mass, the very sight and scent of which drains the life from me, until all my light is congealed, one single drop, one little gem, a precious little ruby of darkness, and in the cut of its shimmering visage, 6 trillion voices sing back to me my own rhythm of fear. I had to read that entire stanza because it felt like a crime to cut it off before the end. I mean, just stop and think about how that flowed. Think about the word choice. Think about the raw and aching emotion in the words. It's truly incredible. You'll find a link to the full piece in the show notes, and I highly suggest you check it out. Fourth this week is Will in Spirit by L.G. Wells. This post somehow flew under my radar, but I'm so happy I've been given the chance to check it out for a shout out on this week's episode. For context, L.G. Wells was the featured guest on episode 17 of the show. If you haven't checked out his interview, definitely do so. In that episode, he talks about his time in a band and producing music before he got into writing like he is now. Well, folks, this piece gives us a look into that aspect of his creative journey, and it is awesome. We get a little background before the post, which includes full song lyrics and a recording of one of the band's tracks. Top it off with this badass photo of LG himself at the end, and this piece was just an entire experience from top to bottom. The song is so good, too. It has this classic rock feel, but feels fresh and new at the same time. It brings me back to the days when I used to hang out with my dad and we would bond over some of his favorite classic rock bands like AC/DC, Boston, Journey, Kiss, Twisted Sister, Poison, and so many more. Seriously, I had an absolute blast reading and listening to the elements of this post. I already thought LG was insanely cool and incredibly talented, but this piece just solidifies him as an all-time total badass. Here's an excerpt from the song's lyrics that I really liked. The stones cry out, the waters whisper of the past, the birds and creatures, I am one with them at last. Cleanse my spirit, sacred place, fill my soul. Ancient wisdom, Father's knowledge makes me whole. I'm so serious. You have to check this out and listen to the song at the link in the show notes because I loved this. All right, and last this week is Lockjaw by Asteria Geisterblum. I've heard about Asteria's work so many times over the last few months, and I've also seen them in the comments and in my posts liking and supporting what I'm doing, so I'm really excited for this chance to dive into one of their pieces. And right off the bat, the atmosphere and emotion in this piece is stunning. The pacing of each stanza is incredibly consistent, the rhythm of each line is captivating, and the word choice is pitch perfect. Every line delivers punchy imagery as well. I audibly gasped at several of the lines. The piece creates this almost claustrophobic atmosphere for the reader. The short lines and tight stanzas make you feel like the world is closing in around you, which honestly matches the themes of the poem. It's a hauntingly relatable piece as well. This excerpt in particular really jumped out at me. On the good days, the jaw only locks once or twice. I barely notice the clench, until it hurts. The pressure climbs my face, settles under the cheekbones. Something's rising, then forgetting how. Honestly, I'm truly impressed. Asteria's writing voice is just so cohesive, and the vision of the poem is really well realized in this piece. Add in the fact that it's also perfectly structured, and you just have a poem that jumps right off the page. It's phenomenal work, and a great way to close out this week's shoutouts. Thank you to everyone who submitted, and let's get on to this week's writing discussion. Alright, and this week we're pulling some key points from my article on how to set the scope for your story. Scope is one of those things that many people forget to think about. You want your story and your imagination to be boundless, of course, and to be clear, it should be. But at some point, you need to reckon with the agonizing march of time and the mortal nature of your corporeal form. In other words, you gotta make sure you can finish the project. That's why scope is important. It gives us guardrails on our projects. It ensures they meet the right word count, stay on topic, and most importantly, get published. And if you want to dive deeper, the full article is available right now on my publication. Step 1 is to decide on a format. Does it feel like a short story, a flash fiction, a poem, or maybe something larger like a new book? You won't know all the answers in the moment, but it's important to at least narrow down your options. And of course, you should consider how this will fit into your current workload. If you're like me and you're already working on several projects, including a novel, it may be a good idea to just focus on finding a balance where this new story idea can exist, but in a shorter format. Step 2 is to decide on a starting point. Your idea may include a wide range of potential settings across various time periods within your setting, so a good way to narrow the scope is to think about where this piece will fit into the larger world. Something that a lot of writers, myself included, like to use is a tactic called in media res, which roughly translates to in the middle of things. This approach allows you to jump right into the action, which is especially useful if you're doing a short story or flash fiction piece. There are other options, of course, but you can check those out in the full article if you'd like. Step 3 is to consider the goals for your piece. When we think about that, we want to think about the hero's journey as a framework, and not necessarily the entire thing, because there's a lot of steps to that, but some of the major elements. In particular, there are 3 major phases of the structure that I want to look at. Separation, what event or experience sets the hero on their journey. Initiation, what journey or struggles do they go through? And return, how they are changed or transformed by what happened. Use these as pillars for the basic structure of your story, and then this will translate well into the goals for your broader narrative. That's all I've got for now, but there are 5 total steps in the article, so check the show notes for a link if you'd like to read the full piece. Next up is this week's writer interview. This week, I'm really excited to welcome to the show an amazing writer and a key pillar of the writing community here on Substack. And without further ado, I'm excited to welcome to the show the one, the only, TP Chaos. But wait, hang on a second. Sorry, folks, something's up with the audio for the interview. Give me a second here. I'm going to bring Sarah on to help me figure this out. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Hey, Sarah, thanks for coming on to the show.
Sure thing. What did you need my help with?
Well, it's the weirdest thing. I was trying to upload my interview with TP Chaos from earlier this week, but the audio is really messed up.
Messed up how?
It's hard to explain. It's almost like it's not in English. I'm so confused. I asked them to send me their written answers, and even those came through in another language as well. I'm wondering if you recognize it by any chance.
Let me take a look. This is chaos language. You know, like the one they use in the Nier video games?
Oh, okay. That explains it. Yeah, I've spent my whole life trying to understand English, so I'm not fluent in any other language, chaos included.
No sweat. I can read it.
Wait, really? You can?
Yeah, just ask me the questions and I'll read the answers from TP Chaos.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, all right, let's get started. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Now that we've sorted out that little speed bump, I'm excited to introduce TP Chaos to the Saved as Draft podcast, with answers read by the prompt goddess herself, Sarah Rush. Thanks again for the help, Sarah.
You're welcome.
So let's get started with our first question. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your creative journey thus far?
When I first joined Substack, it was a whisper, a quiet step into the unknown. I wasn't sure where I would land or if my words would ever find a place to belong. Then came Flash Fiction February, and with it, you, Bradley. Your invitation into the world of story was more than a prompt. It was a door. And on the other side was a fiercely supportive, carefully crafted community that believed in voices still learning to believe in themselves. I wouldn't be the writer I am on Substack without your encouragement, Bradley, and the way your presence on this platform shaped so many of us. Your dedication to lifting others gave me the courage to find my voice. From those first flash fictions to joining various publications, testing my footing, lending my voice, I slowly found what mattered most, a space where stories could thrive and creators could rise together. With the incredible Rachel Tribble, and later the rest of our dream team, Edward and Griffin, we built a new home for chaos, the kind of beautiful, brilliant chaos that only art can hold, Turtles of Alchemy. Since then, it's been a blur. We grew faster than I ever imagined. From a whisper to a wildfire, we are now nearly 2,000 souls strong, a collective of storytellers, dreamers, and alchemists of ink. This began with a single voice, unsure and trembling. Now it's a chorus loud enough to change Substack.
Amazing, amazing. And of course, delivered in true chaos fashion, very eloquently. Thank you, Sarah. So, question number 2 for TP Chaos was, what sort of message or lesson do you hope people take away from your stories?
I write to inspire, to reach into the quiet places where pain hides and remind someone they aren't alone. Every story I craft carries its own unique echo, but if I had to choose one truth to whisper across them all, it would be, you're not alone. These worlds are built for you, to wander, to feel, to remember what it means to be seen and heard. They are stitched with grief, with love, with longing. They are places where sorrow becomes survival, where brokenness becomes beauty, and where the ache you carry finds a voice. If even one line wraps around a reader's heart and whispers, I understand, then every hour spent bleeding words onto the page is worth it. This is why I keep writing, because there are still stories trapped behind teeth, still hearts waiting for someone to speak the language of their silence. Because sometimes stories I write are the ones I needed when I was younger, the ones I still need. and because nothing feels more like home than knowing someone somewhere found shelter in my words. This is survival stitched in metaphor. It's connection carved from solitude. It's proof that even in the dark, we find each other.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so question number 3. When did you first realize you wanted to be a writer? Do you remember the first story you ever wrote?
Truthfully, I don't think I ever had that one shining cinematic moment. I wasn't the kind of kid who dreamed in futures. I didn't have a support system that told me I could be something. I wasn't asked what I wanted to become, so I never learned how to want it. Sounds sad, I know. It was. But I do remember the first story I ever wrote. It was in elementary school, a paper, of all things, for math class. We were assigned to write about a mathematician, and I chose Archimedes. Most kids scribbled down the basics. I fell down a rabbit hole of ancient text, water displacement theories, the eureka moment, and the beauty of formulas that still whisper truth centuries later. I remember the rush of gathering those pieces, the thrill of shaping them into something bigger than a report. I remember the stunned look on my teacher's face. I remember, for the first time, the feeling of being heard. Maybe that was the spark. Maybe I didn't know I wanted to be a writer until I realized writing was how I survived a world that never asked me what I needed. Maybe that paper on Archimedes was the first time I saw what stories could do. They could astonish and could connect, even if no one remembered the writer, even if the writer was just a quiet kid with too much in their head and nowhere to place it, until the page made room.
Amazing. I love that it was a math report of all things. For some reason, that's very chaos. Okay. Question 4. How would you describe your writing style, and what genres do you typically write?
I write quietly with feeling first. My style leans into atmosphere and emotion, more instinct than structure. I try to let each story speak for itself, carrying weight through detail, rhythm, and the space between words. At its core, my writing explores the human condition, grief, mental health, connection, and all the things we carry but don't always say out loud. I don't write to offer answers. I write to make space for feeling. If a story can sit beside someone in their hardest moment and help them feel a little more seen, that's more than enough. Genre-wise, I move between soft fantasy, emotional horror, and literary microfiction. I tend to blur the lines a bit, layering magical realism into grief stories or slipping heartache into worlds with impossible rules. Most of my work is short form, flash fiction, microfiction, and poetry. I try to build small worlds that stay with you longer than expected. If I had to describe it in a sentence, I write soft stories with sharp edges, meant to be felt before they're understood.
Amazing. I love that last line. I think it captures the feeling of Chaos's stories really well. Question 5. You and I initially met around the time of the Devine Challenge. Your story took home first place in that challenge. Can you talk us through what inspired it and how you felt when you knew that you'd won?
Honestly, it still doesn't feel real. Elara, this quiet, paint-stained girl I wrote from the heart, somehow found a home in a world I had only just begun to explore. Not just a home, she was chosen, celebrated. That alone still makes me pause. What's wild is, remember, I didn't even know I entered. When I saw the prompt, I got so excited at the thought of a themed challenge that I skipped the entire explanation. I just saw the words, lit up like a spark had caught, and ran straight off to binge read every tale I could find from the world of Devine. I didn't breathe until Alara's story was done. Later, much later, you told me it had been a contest, that I had submitted to be chosen. I think I stared at my screen for a solid minute. I hadn't just written one story, I wrote two. One in your world of Devine about the lost Majiri, and one set in our modern day. That's how deep the inspiration ran. I read about their lost magic and thought to myself, what if they came back? What if someone painted their way home? When I won, I was definitely not crying into my Substack. I was, fully, unashamedly. Shock does not even begin to cover it. Awe, maybe. Gratitude, absolutely. I never expected to win, not for a second. I just wanted to write something beautiful in a world that moved me. The fact that it resonated enough to be chosen still leaves me speechless.
That's such a great answer. And as a quick aside here, I still think about that Devine story, and I remember both you, Sarah, and I had read all of the entries, and we kind of came together with sort of a blind judge on each of them. And each of us came to the table with our top three. And if I recall correctly, either all three, or certainly I know the Chaos's story, I believe both you and I were like, yeah, this is the number one winner. Like we agreed from the very beginning, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
It's so cool. All right, let's keep moving. Question 6. As part of winning the challenge, you also get to design and write a character, as you're able and would like to, in the upcoming Devine series, The Order of the Pawn. So, can you tell us a little bit about that character and her personality?
Oh, Alara, where do I begin? She carries sadness like it was stitched into her shadow, quiet, deliberate, haunting. Her childhood was not kind to her. It shaped her into someone who sees the world through ash-tinged glass, always waiting for something beautiful to break. And yet, she creates. She paints life back into a world that tried to erase her. I can't wait to share her backstory soon. It carries the weight of a truth too heavy to hold, yet impossible to set down. As for the Order of the Pawn, I am absolutely losing my mind with excitement. The fact that Alara gets to be part of this world, that world, is still unreal. She gets to stand beside the characters I've admired to carve her place as an Avenger among the shadows and power. It feels like bringing a dream to life. She's ready. I'm ready. And I think the world of Devine will never be the same.
And on that last part, we can absolutely agree. It blows my mind just to think that there are fans of Devine after so many years of writing these stories and kind of, putting them out into the world. It wasn't until recently that they kind of got discovered. So I love that answer. Question 7. You're also incredibly active in the writing community here, and one of the founding members of the publication, Turtles of Alchemy. Can you tell us what inspired that publication and some of the goals you have for it in the future?
Rachel and I opened our very first conversation by doing what all perfectly normal people do, brainstorming an entire fictional world together. That world became Elysium. One idea led to another, and before we knew it, we were co-writing the lore, building character arcs, and somewhere along the way, co-founding a publication. Turtles of Alchemy was born from that magic, the kind that happens when creative minds collide and say, what if we built something bigger than the both of us? Since then, we've grown our little shell into something we're deeply proud of. We have our multi-talented artist and writer, a true gem, Rachel, and our brilliant horror author whose stories chill and captivate in equal measure, Edward. We're only getting started. Soon we'll be expanding into articles. We have a completely unhinged and wildly fun plan for those. Dedicated art pages and dedicated horror pages. Our heads are overflowing with ideas. We just need more writer power to bring them all to life. At the end of the day, Turtles is more than a publication. It's a place to uplift others, to collaborate, and to create something strange and beautiful together. We don't know exactly where the road leads, but we'll ride it in our tiny turtle shoes, one chaotic idea at a time. Speaking of uplifting others, our entire mission is rooted in community, highlighting one writer a day, 6 days a week, and celebrating the incredible voices across Substack. Whether it's through our whimsical story highlights or our column features, we're always finding new ways to help creators shine. We recently launched an art feature to showcase the incredible talent of our multi-talented artist Rachel, offering visual storytelling alongside our words. Our Substack columns are filled with inspiration, unhinged writing polls, and we have chaos-infused prompts meant to make you cry, laugh, and write something wildly unexpected. We're building a haven for creators, a place where words and art are celebrated, where strange ideas are nurtured, and where no one gets left behind.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, Turtles of Alchemy, it's been incredible to see that publication grow. And with this latest interview here with TP Chaos, I have officially had every single one of the three current Turtles on the show. Of course, I'm leaving out Griffin. I need to reach out and perhaps interview them at some point. But regardless, the founding members are now all part of the Saved as Draft podcast, and that's fantastic. Question 8. How did you initially find out about Substack, and what drew you to this platform in particular?
Truthfully, I didn't find Substack. Substack found me through a very persistent friend who refused to let me not make a profile. At first, I was skeptical. I had shouted into the void on too many platforms, pouring stories into timelines that swallowed them whole. The idea of setting up yet another profile only for it to vanish into silence felt exhausting. I expected more of the same. What I found instead was a library wrapped in warmth, a place that felt like home the moment I stepped through the door. Substack is different. The shelves feel infinite, yet every voice echoes. It's community and creativity woven together. I had never seen anything like it, where stories breathe and readers listen. I fell in love with the quiet wonder of it all. The feeling of belonging, something so rare, so sacred, I almost didn't recognize it at first. Now, I use Substack every day. I'm never leaving. None of us should. If you're a writer searching for your people, find Turtles. If your words feel lost, if your voice shakes, if you need someone to remind you that you matter, we will. Join Bradley's challenges, engage with our community, comment, connect, create. We'll cheer for you louder than you have ever been cheered for. We'll help you find the shape of your voice in a sea of silence. Ask questions, reach out, share something small. You don't need to be polished, you just need to begin. There's a place for you here with Turtles and Bradley, a space waiting to be filled by your words. And I promise, if you let us, we will help you build something beautiful.
That's incredibly inspirational. And honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly what it's all about. And that is by far the vibe that I get, not only from Chaos, but also everyone over at Turtles of Alchemy and the broader community as a whole. Shout out to Substack. I always say that it's people that define a platform. And in this case, it's the best people you could ever possibly hope to be in a community with. So I couldn't agree more with that answer. Question 9. Do you have any projects you're working on outside of Substack you'd like to tell us about?
I began writing a book during the launch of Turtles of Alchemy, two dreams growing side by side, both rooted in a quiet hope I barely dared to speak aloud. The book, from the very beginning, fought me. The characters ran, the words dragged. Life threw every possible storm my way, testing every ounce of my strength and resolve. I would sit at my desk, exhausted, broken open, and try again. Some days the page was silent, others it held me. Through grief, doubt, and everything in between, I returned to it again and again. And somehow, despite everything, I finished. I am an author with Audio Mazes. The book will be carefully crafted by Audio Mazes, a company that brings stories to life through immersive, branching narratives. Their audiobooks are built with cinematic soundscapes, diverging plot lines, and performances that turn stories into full body experiences. I still can't quite believe my words will be part of something so uniquely alive. I'm finally in edits, and I can feel the light at the end of it. I wouldn't have made it here without you. You helped me through some of the darkest moments of doubt when the weight of the words felt too heavy and I couldn't see what was worth continuing. Your support encouraged me. You reminded me of the magic in what I do, even when I had forgotten. You are truly one of the most thoughtful people I have had the honor to create beside. This book is more than a story, it's survival in a new form. I can't wait to share it with everyone. We all struggle, all of us. Sometimes life closes in until there's no air left to breathe. When those moments come, please remember you are not alone. There is strength in reaching out, in finding a voice, a hand, a spark. Stay, write, create, heal. Let someone walk with you. There is always a light in the tunnel, even if right now you can't see it. Reach out to us. You matter more than you know, and we are always, always here to read your words, to hold space for your silence, to remind you that even the heaviest chapters turn their pages. So when it hurts, when it feels like no one sees you, reach. There will be hands, there will be light, there will be us.
Amazing. This continues to be one of the most inspiring interviews that I've conducted. But I also, again, couldn't agree more. And when it comes to the support that Chaos is talking about, that's what it's all about. And I try to provide that support to as many people as possible in our community. But Chaos is right there beside me, doing the same amount of work, if not more so, every single day. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Phenomenal answer there. Question 10. What's next for TP Chaos? Any big plans for the future here on Substack or in general that you'd like to share?
Right now, most of my heart belongs to Turtles of Alchemy, our ever expanding home for writers, artists, and dreamers who believe in lifting each other up. What started as a shared world building conversation between friends has grown into something far greater than we imagined. Nearly 2,000 incredible souls have joined us. Every day, we grow stronger, more creative, and more connected. We're not slowing down. Soon, we'll be launching new sections, unhinged articles, art pages, horror pages, and so much more. We're building something enduring here, something rooted in community, connection, and stories that matter. If you have ever needed a place to belong, we're crafting it for you. As for what comes next, that's the beauty of it. I don't have all the answers. Life tried more than once to pull the pen from my hands, but I kept going because the story mattered, because I knew what it could become. And now I stand on the edge of something extraordinary. Turtles of Alchemy and the audiobook are more than a dream. They are a step into everything I have fought to reach. What I do have is a foundation built on fire and community, a growing publication with endless potential, a book that clawed its way into the world, a voice that no longer questions if it deserves to speak. And if life has taught me anything, it's that the wildest stories are still waiting to be written. So we keep going. We keep building. We follow the current wherever it leads, because chaos was forged in fire, carved from ruin, and crowned in storm, shaped by the world, silenced by none.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I am honestly speechless. Thank you To everyone listening, thank you to the community. Thank you to Chaos for coming on to the show. And thank you, most of all, to Sarah for being the voice of Chaos here in this interview. I know we all appreciate it, and we appreciate your help getting Chaos's voice and their story out there. So thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, and thank you again for all those amazing answers from TP Chaos. I had to go in there for a second, didn't I? As you can see by this last interview, my interviews on the Saved as Draft podcast can take a lot of different forms. If you're interested on coming on the show, but prefer not to have your voice recorded, written answers are an entirely valid approach. I want to welcome as many folks onto the podcast as I can, so if you're curious about a written interview option read by myself or Sarah, don't hesitate to reach out. And next up, I'm excited to welcome back to the show, Voidy.
I can attest, Sir Voidy's the best. He wouldn't dare play it close to the vest. He's here to share, from here into there, the writers and words of which he does care.
Hey, Voidy, welcome back to the show.
I have returned after 90 days of reflection.
It's been like 2 weeks, maybe 3?
Just let me have this.
Okay, fine, sure. So, what did you discover during your reflection?
I decided that I'm tired of talking about myself. There's an entire void of people who aren't being heard. Me specifically, since I'm a physical manifestation of the void.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, what are you thinking?
Thoughts from the Void is now a new segment called Echoes from the Void.
Oh, wow, a name change. Okay, and what else?
I'm going to collect questions from people in the Void each week, and then we'll talk about them on the show.
Wow, I love it. So, how can people submit their questions?
Well, in addition to the Tuesday shoutouts thread, an Echoes from the Void thread will show up on Mondays every week in the subscriber chat. You can ask anything you want about writing or life in general.
I like it.
Great. Let me know how it goes.
Oh, wait, so you're not going to handle this new segment?
I'll be here every week, don't worry.
Okay, right. All right, well, I still think it's a great idea.
I appreciate it. I'll see you next week for our first round of questions.
And there you have it, folks. Keep an eye out for the first Echoes from the Void thread coming this next week. Feel free to drop any questions you like in there about writing, stories, my work, my process, or whatever else you have on your mind. The Void is a big place, so Voidy and I are hoping to make it feel a little less empty with this new segment. This coming week on Substack, we're ending the Madness and Mayhem Challenge as we head into June. Honestly, it's always bittersweet when a challenge like this one ends, and while I don't have anything lined up for June myself, I will say that prompts and writing challenges will continue to be a part of what we got going on here at The Writer's Journey. So stay tuned for more information there, including some plans for ongoing weekly prompts in between these larger challenges. I'm also shifting focus back to the Devine Preludes this week as I look to launch the Devine series, The Order of the Pawn. Once that series gets started, I'll be offering early access to new chapters for paid subscribers. Once the early access period is over, chapters will be available to everyone. But this is just one way that I'm thinking about adding value for my paid subscribers in the community, and I want to do it in a way that doesn't take away from what I'm already offering. It's important that I don't just paywall stuff that's normally free. So as I move forward, I'll always try to add value, not take it away. And of course, I'm always listening to the community, so if something I'm doing isn't a good fit, you can always let me know, and you can bet I'll adjust accordingly. And that's all I've got for this week. Thank you so much for listening, for being a part of this community, and for being the amazing people that you are. I appreciate all of you, and I'm wishing you all a wonderful and productive week of writing. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.
We has decided what our story is going to be.
Oh, that's great. So what are you guys going to do?
It's going to be a stage play. No, I said screenplay. You always do this.